Welcome everybody to the seasonal diet, eating what our ancestors ate when they ate it, like we were evolved to do. So most of you guys that are watching the channel are from the north of Europe, or at least have Northern European ancestry. I can see in the analytics, and also I've known quite a lot of you for some time now from my other channel. On this channel I have been speaking mainly about the diets of the historical European people, especially in the north of Europe. But there are tons of different ancestral diets and people from all around the world. They are very different, but there are many things that are the same, okay? And these similarities basically, correlate to the seasons and the climate. The variety in climate between the seasons is where we see the most similarities and differences depending on where your ancestors are from. So what I usually do is I usually break foods up into 4 groups: the meats, or the dairy and the animal products, the fruits, the vegetables, and the herbs. Yeah, we can maybe put things like mushrooms in there too, and other forage foods. I classify that all under herbs or forage things. So if your ancestors were from a place that had seasons, the diet is going to be similar no matter where in the world that you come from. It's going to be heavy on the meat in the winter, heavy on the herbs and foraged leafy things in the spring, heavy on fruit in the summer, and heavy on vegetables in the fall. So all of these food categories are going to have different foods in there, but the categories themselves are actually not that different when we go to places around the world with similar climates. So this is true for places like Scandinavia, Northern Asia, North America, and even flipped over in places like South America. If you go far south down there to Chile or the southern tip of that, or New Zealand, those types of things. If you are living in the southernmost region in those places, the general spread between the diets in the seasons is the same as you would find in the north of Europe, which I talk about mostly on this channel. So, and like I said, the first difference is the actual foods that are native to that place and what your ancestors have been eating for the longest time. And the second difference is what's the history of the region that you are from, because some places have been farmers for a lot longer than others, and some places in the world the hunter-gatherer cultures lasted some all the way up until today. So that is a big difference in when domestication and farming came into the history. Now that's the kind of southern regions of the world. In the places in the world where we get a little bit closer to the equator, the seasons get less diverse. It's still the same principles as the ones I just mentioned, but they will have a lot more wiggle room, basically, because when the seasons become lesser, more things can grow for longer. For example, my ancestors in Norway would have brought their livestock in for the winter, and they would have harvested their vegetables in September, October time, right around now. If some of you have Italian or Greek ancestry, maybe you would have done this same thing in November, December time. It's those types of things that makes it a lot easier to follow your own unique ancestral seasonal diet. When we get even further closer to the equator, though, there are basically no seasons in these places, and humans there would have had very, very little variability in their diets year-round. The biggest differences that affect that would be like the rainy seasons, or the climate, or local traditions and things like that. But in general, in regions that are living right around the equator, they ate almost the same foods all year round. With modern technology, though, greenhouses and transport, this has allowed for us humans, even in the far north of the world, to eat like tropical humans have eaten throughout their history, with very little seasonal change in our diets, actually. But this is not how our ancestors evolved, and they would have had a lot more variation in what they could have eaten around the year. And this is the key difference in the seasonal diet, depending on your ancestry. So you can look at it apply everything that I speak about in my videos to your homelands, wherever your family comes from, and I will cover the diets of all places in the world eventually, because there is some fascinating stuff from all over, but just, you know, I want you guys to remember the general principles. So again, the principles are heavy meat in the winter, heavy on the herbs and forage leafy things in the spring, heavy on the fruits in the summer, and heavy on the vegetables in the fall, where we are right now. And the further you are from the equator, the more your ancestors would have had to stick to these guidelines basically from season to season. The closer to the equator you get, the more flexibility you have in these things. And also the elevation, by the way, plays a role too. If your ancestors were, you know, mountain people versus sea people, there is a similar difference to that as well. But that is a subject for another video.